Well, hello everyone. Good evening. How are you all tonight? I hope you are all having a fantastic weekend. It's Sunday, which happens to be a day later than my normal live streams. But for those of you guys who follow me at all, you know I play MechWarrior Online as well, and I happen to be part of a comp team right now. Well, most comp matches are on Saturday nights. There's a slight conflict between me being able to read to you live and being able to play in the comp match. So I move these. Humberto Lopez, hello, hello. Welcome on in. Glad to have you here with us as we are getting ready to start our live read of The Blacksmith's Boy by Bruce Buchanan. Tonight we will be finishing The Blacksmith's Boy. That's right, however long it takes us to get through, we are here for the duration. So I hope you guys are all excited to be here for the finale. Yes, we will read, we will enjoy, we will love it all together. So, what better way to end the month, right? Let's talk a little bit about what happened on the last stream. We left on a cliffhanger, as I'll cover in just a moment, but our protagonists kind of got themselves into a little bit of a pickle. I mean, maybe, having the ceiling of a cave fall down upon them, it could be considered a pickle, right? That's the story. That's what we hear. So, that is where we will pick it up tonight. But let's talk a little bit about everything that we went through. So, we started with after the intense battles, Bok and Isabella rushed to check Kotarian. Moments later, Aventil returned with a badly beaten but alive Tovano. All right, Tovano, who has been held captive in a crate. The group is reunited, but trust has been severely damaged. Then, despite heading towards danger, the next few days on a boat are surprisingly pleasant. Aventil sings sea shanties and handles the sailing expertly. Well, Bok struggles with seasickness. I mean, he's lived his entire life on a farm. I suppose it shouldn't be surprising. Declan Players, hi. Welcome on in. And then, let's see, where were we at? Then Bok takes over steering the boat so Aventil can rest. You could just pick up the steering of a boat wherever you happen to be, right? That's the way that works? No? What? Isabella goes below deck while Bok has an awkward but important conversation with Kotarian on deck, and they come to a mutual understanding and, if not a friendship, an acquaintanceship. Then King Isbiano called an emergency meeting of the Royal Council to address the growing crisis. Salandrian secretly watched the proceedings from a hidden spot before he moved in and kind of attacked the meeting, killed a whole bunch of people, and did his thing. The group arrived in Ithanel Harbor, where they see the growing refugee crisis from the North Country. They reflect on their journey and what lies ahead. Then Bok is stunned when a glowing astral projection of Salandrian appears before the group. The traitor boldly taunts them as he reveals his true power and intentions by dropping the roof of the tunnel they were in upon their heads. What a nice guy. Don't you just love it? And that is where we will be picking it up tonight. Bam Bam, hello, hello. Welcome on in. We'll be picking it up in Chapter 44 tonight. If you have missed any of the previous chapters, they are available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, all available for your listening enjoyment. After tonight's stream, I will put the rest of the chapters up onto the YouTube channel for you. It does mean that I record them as we go through, so unfortunately, I'm not able to speak to you while we are doing the recording, but I will be happy to catch up with you in between chapters, and we can talk about what happened. Just put your thoughts and comments wherever you happen to be, and I am happy to address them, answer questions. They don't even have to be about the book. I've answered questions to people about voice acting, because clearly I do that, right? I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh, yes. After tonight, I will also be taking all of the chapters that I have recorded and stringing them together into hopefully one long thing that you can listen to, and I will be uploading that to the Rumble account. Just search for the Blacksmiths Boy on Rumble. I'm certain I am the only one who will have it. Now, wherever you happen to be, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy as we will dive ourselves into another evening of reading of an indie author with the Blacksmiths Boy. If you are so interested, you can pick up this book on Amazon. You can check out the publisher's website, Wild Ink Publishing, or you can go to the author's website, brucebuchananauthor.com. And now, let's get ourselves started, shall we? As we read again, starting in Chapter 44. Salandrian strutted into the royal palace's main dining hall. Kotarian and the princess will bother us no more. Most of the scions stopped their work, stood beside their tables, and bowed their heads to their true leader. A half dozen did not, only because they maintained the stasis entrapping the House of Magic. After 2 hours of constant spell casting, these 6 sorcerers would be replaced by 6 fresh colleagues and given a chance to rest. And so it would continue until Salandrian disposed of the helpless house sorcerers. He was in no hurry to do so, though. He ordered a terrified member of the palace's kitchen staff to fetch him a cup of wine. The man sprinted to the kitchen to obey, as other palace servants stood motionless at attention around the vast hall, trembling faces fixed on their conqueror. Don Landrian spoke first. We knew it would be so, true leader. The preparations for the next blight are nearly finished. Good. Inform me when the spell is ready. I shall be upstairs in the royal council chambers. Tell me, what wine should we serve at our victory feast? Cough. We are okay? We are safe. Isabella's spell-enchanted left hand lit up the small space around her and her friends, but her statement consisted entirely of wishful thinking and was not entirely true in almost any appreciable way. The 2 sorcerers, along with Bok, had been able to project shield spells around the group. Those shields held up to the avalanche. The rock and debris formed a small pocket as they fell, carving out a space no bigger than 5 feet in diameter in which the 4 friends now crammed. Piles of dirt and stone blocked them in on all sides, unable to move forward or back the way they came. Cough! Cough! Isabella cleared her lungs again. She'd inhaled a face full of dust, and a falling rock cut her right arm. A layer of brown dirt coated all 4, but they had much bigger problems. An invisible hand throttled Bok's throat, panic making him fight for each dust-filled breath. Blood pulsed through every vein, to the point he could hear his own heartbeat. He examined the huge chunks of granite jammed together above their heads. The rocks are stable for now, but who knows for how long? The whole passage could collapse at any second. He took a deep breath, trying to hold his terror at bay. But that may not matter. The air in here could run out before the roof collapses. Isabella, we have to get out of here, or... She raised her hands to the pile of rock blocking the passage in front of them, whispered a silent prayer, and spoke the incantation for the push-pull spell. The rocks shifted and trembled, kicking dust into the small nook, but the massive pile did not move. After a minute of pushing against the stone with all her mystical might, Isabella stopped, her energy momentarily depleted. She slumped over with her hands on her knees, taking in the thinning air in deep gulps. We're going to die. I'll never see Mother, Father, Yata, and Noji again. And if Salandrian has his way, I might be the luckiest in the family. No. If Bok died, it would only be after giving everything to himself and his friends. Let me try. Instead of focusing his magic toward the front of the tunnel, he directed it at the rubble blocking the passage behind him. That may mean leaving the captured king, Wingate, and his companions at the mercy of Salandrian, but Bok didn't see any other way for them to escape the Scion's trap. He reached out with his mind and focused on the largest piece of fallen granite he could find. A greenish-blue tendril of energy emerged from his hand and encircled the broken piece of stone. He latched onto it with his spell, got firm control of it, and pushed. And pushed. But as with Isabella, nothing happened. Some dirt and small rocks fell from the roof above them. However, the tons of stone and dirt blocking the passage was too heavy to move. Help me. With your power, we may be able to move the stones. Isabella and Kotarian joined in the spell. 2 more tendrils of blue-green energy extended forward and combined with Bok's in surrounding the biggest piece of granite. On my command! Now! Kotarian yelled. They pushed forward as one. Their combined efforts placed incredible force on the pile of dirt and soil. The mound became indented where their magical energies pushed forward. But it would not move. The 3 tried again. And again. And a 4th time, pouring every bit of their energy and essence into each attempt. But the pile of rock entrapping them would not budge, no matter how hard they pushed. Bok, Isabella, and Kotarian stopped casting, completely taxed by the effort. Bok gasped for air, which did not fill his lungs. He became lightheaded and dizzy and collapsed to one knee. Kotarian dropped to the ground as well, his hands limp at his side. It is no use. Aventil, who stood behind the 3 spellcasters, watched intently, took Isabella into his arms and pulled her close to him. Isabella, if our good fortune has run its course, just know, I love you, now and forever. She looked up weakly, as if she could barely lift her head. She rested her face against his cheek, her eyes closed. And I love you, Aventil. Even when we were angry with one another, I never stopped loving you. She then opened her eyes and lifted her head. Bok, there is something. Bok staggered back up to his feet. His legs nearly buckled beneath him, but profound fear of dying, and failing his loved ones, gave him the strength to rise again. I know, and I value your friendship too, but we need to try to move these rocks again. They would die within minutes if they could not force a way through the rock. What would that mean for the Omat family? They had to find a way out. If we focus our efforts, concentrate all our power, we may be able to move. Isabella stopped him. You are not a secret child of the noble class, Bok. We lied to you, my friend. Oh, no. Why would they have lied to him? I think I know. At least I have a guess. See, I believe that everybody with magical abilities could cast either side of the magic. Now, am I right? Who knows? I might be. I could be wildly wrong. But either way, I think that's what she's getting ready to reveal. Think I could be right? Who knows? Who knows? Let's see. That's what I thought it was. Okay. All right. I'm testing out the auto scroll features on Adobe because, you know, that's what I've got. All right. Well, everyone, we can't stop there. Let's continue on with Chapter 45. Isabella lied? Why would she do that? Despite the dust filling his lungs and the impending death teetering above his head, Bok could think of nothing else. He knew how troubled he had been by Tovano's revelation, how painful it was to think his parents had deceived him his entire life. His head spun as though he might faint, for reasons beyond just the thinning air. Isabella sighed deeply. Aventil and Kotarian knew nothing of this, so please, do not blame them for my deception. Tovano and I lied to you to protect one of our kingdom's oldest secrets. For centuries, our people have believed that only those of noble class birth can be born with the ability to perform high magic. Such a belief has been foundational for our society. We, the noble class, rule benevolently because we were endowed with a potential that others do not possess. Everyone has an important role to perform, and all classes are valued parts of our society. But the noble class leads because we earned that right, and our control of high magic is proof of that mandate. That is what we all were raised to believe. She looked down, even more defeated than she had been looking at her father imprisoned by Solantrian's spell. But the truth is, Bok, that people from all classes, including those of the serving class, may be born with the acumen to perform high magic. You were. We in the royal family have hidden the truth for generations. It is shameful and wrong. My ancestors believed allowing non-nobles to practice magic would undermine Imerinia's strict social order, and every king and queen since that time has kept that secret, for fear of upending that system. Kotarian exploded at Isabella's revelation. By Chalandrian's chaining chastity! Do you realize what you are saying? The entire foundation of the House of Magic is built on a deception. How do you know these things, when I have never even heard such whispers? Forget your House of Magic. Isabella, how could you keep such a terrible secret from me? Aventil looked to Isabella, who kept her eyes turned to the stone floor. My father told me in private, and only within recent weeks, she said. It is the most closely guarded secret of our kingdom. The only people who know are my father, the emissary of magic, and Tovano, who apparently discovered the truth on his own many years ago. Because if this became public knowledge, if the people knew their monarchs had lied to them for centuries, it could rend Imerinia apart. But by the Exalted One, why now? Aventil exclaimed, when we are in such a life-or-death predicament. Because I owe Bok the truth. With a shaky finger she pointed to the stunned healer. I should have told him, told everyone sooner. But after all the four of us have experienced together, I cannot go to my death having lied to the people I love. Bok put his hands over his face, unable to process what he was being told. He was not a baron, not a long-lost son of some distant noble. He was who he had always believed, a blacksmith's boy from Sola Valley, serving class yet born with the acumen for high knowledge. Impossible. But it also seemed impossible that his friend, the woman he had fallen in love with over the course of this journey, would betray him so deeply. So I'm not. No, Bok. I am truly sorry. This is why I was upset when you discovered the ability to perform high magic. I knew I would have to lie to you, and I did not want to do that. Please forgive me, my friend. My friend? What type of friend lied about something so important? How many others in the serving class had lived and died never knowing they possessed the acumen for high magic? How would their lives, and the lives of their families and communities, been better if they had known? And what does it say about me that I was tempted to accept such a falsehood, to turn my back on all that I am, to believe the worst about my parents? Isabella isn't the only one who should be ashamed. Bok took a low, ragged breath, his hand still covering his face. Isabella tugged at his sleeve. Bok, say something, please. Hate me if you must, but please talk to me. He was not willing to give her comfort, or forgive himself. What he had to offer, however, was a desperate plan of escape. Listen, none of this matters. Not now, anyway. We need to get out of this death trap. If we don't, no one will be around to care who lied to whom. Obviously, Kotarian said. But how do you propose we move that heap of rock and rubble when all three of us failed before? We use the transmission spell. Bok slammed his fist into the palm of his hand. Tovano told me about it. It's our only hope of escape. The transmission spell? Ritovian's rapid relocation? Bok, that only works on non-living matter. I realize you don't know. I do know, Kotarian, and it will work on living beings. It isn't used because of the risks. At this point, that's a chance I am willing to take. I do not want to die in this hole. Bok is correct, Kotarian. Isabella finally looked up. This will be dangerous. We could transmit into a solid wall and die instantly. But we must try. Oh, Bok, you have given us hope. Bok didn't respond to Isabella directly. So what do we do now? I don't know the spell, just that it could work. Kotarian exhaled deeply. I am ashamed to admit, but I do not know this spell either. I could perform 101 different spells flawlessly, but the one spell we need, I do not know. I know it. Isabella slapped the dust-covered stone floor, her jaw set. Tovano taught me the transmission spell. Obviously, I have never used it on any living being, much less a person, but I can cast it. Kotarian smiled. I can assist you. I may not know the spell, but I understand the concepts well enough to provide support. But to transport all four of us, you will need Baron Blacksmith to provide us with additional energy too. Bok nodded, then stepped back as far as he could in the small space. Isabella and Kotarian did the same, forming a triangle around Aventil. The merchant's son looked at the mass above their heads. The trickle of dirt and pebbles falling from the ceiling spilled faster. Whatever you do, you need to do it now. The roof is starting to give. Think of the place you know better than any other, the place where you feel most safe and comfortable, Isabella said, to herself as much as anyone. She then moved her hands in an elliptical pattern and spoke words older than the kingdom itself. Greenish-blue energy filled the small nook. Kotarian added a few words and energy flowed from his body into Isabella's. Bok repeated the words that Kotarian chanted and transmitted his own magical energy to the princess, who used it to power her developing spell. Bok immediately felt weak and lightheaded, both from the lack of oxygen and the drain of the spell, but he forced himself to stay on his feet and continued to pour his dwindling supply of energy to Isabella. Then the rocks and dirt disappeared. Even the smell of earth vanished, as did the sensation of being buried alive. The dark passage transformed into a brightly lit tunnel with smooth green-blue walls. Isabella, Aventil, and Kotarian were there, but bathed in a bright white light that quickly grew more and more intense. Within moments he could not see his friends, only the auras surrounding them. Bok wondered if he had blacked out. Isabella, or the bright light containing her, then shot down the tunnel at rapid speed, pulling Aventil with her. Kotarian followed closely behind. To Bok, his friends appeared to be three streaks of light, growing smaller by the instant. He willed himself forward. To his surprise, he moved rapidly through the tunnel. Bok assumed that if he could see himself through the glare, he would see that he, too, was surrounded by an aura of white light. He didn't even need to steer himself down the tunnel. As Isabella turned and moved, so did he, joined as they were by the spell's bond. Bok lost all sense of time and distance. He had no idea of how far he traveled, or how long the journey took. But within minutes, or perhaps just a millisecond, the tunnel's end appeared. It took the shape of a swirling gray mass, bright but completely without form or detail. Isabella and Aventil disappeared into the gray, followed closely by Kotarian. Bok raced forward. He couldn't stop or avoid the tunnel's end, even if he wished to. The shifting cloud of energy drew closer, and then he disappeared. Dun dun dun. Oh no, oh no, oh yeah. So, do we think they survive? What? You think they survive? No, everyone, they couldn't survive, right? It couldn't be. Ah, yes. Of course the protagonists survive. We should expect nothing less of our intrepid heroes. They will live. They will survive. They will thrive? Maybe. Who knows? We will find out shortly as we continue The Blacksmith's Boy and we move into our next chapter. Are you guys ready? I'm ready. For Chapter 46. Bok rematerialized in a bright, sunlit place, staring at the most ornately carved marble wall he had ever seen. Artists had chiseled images of Emerinia's monarchs from centuries past into the white stone. The detail and beauty made Bok gasp. Then he realized he wasn't viewing a wall. He was staring up at a ceiling. And now he fell. He flailed his arms and kicked his legs as if trying to swim, without success. Fortunately, a giant bed, covered in a mountain of pink and teal silk pillows, broke his fall. Bok hit the bed, bounced 3 feet into the air, and landed backside first on the white marble floor. The landing was painful, not to mention undignified, but he was alive and unhurt. Either that or the afterlife looked just like Isabella's bedroom. Oil portraits of Emerinia's most notable painters and hand-woven tapestries that covered dozens of square feet filled the room's marble walls. A giant mahogany wardrobe loomed over one side of the room, and rich red rugs covered most of the floor. But Bok's attention went to the far corner, beyond the edge of the bed. There sat a plain desk piled high with papers and books. In addition to spell books, the stack included volumes about history, geography, art, literature, and science. They shared space on the desk with a well-used oil lamp. A small framed portrait of Queen Ifarina hung on the wall over the desk. It's not hard to understand where Isabella finds her determination. He looked around. Isabella, Aventil, and Kotarian stood around the room, having had smoother re-entries. He put his hand on the floor and pushed his way to his feet, taking care not to betray any signs that he was in pain. Kotarian dusted off his gray jacket. I have to say, peasant once more, Your mad scheme worked. Somehow we are safe, at least until Salandrian and his minions discover our presence, assuming they were not already alerted by our spell. Aventil shook his fist. Then we must take advantage of the time we have and surprise them. Strike now before they discover we have escaped. But we are just 4. Kotarian sat on a large pillow and pulled his legs close to his chest. 4 against an entire cadre of trained spellcasters and like-minded allies who, while not sorcerers, are undoubtedly highly armed. And then there is the matter of Salandrian himself. Even without his minions, he would be an incredibly formidable foe.
Kotarian is correct.
The 3 men all turned to Isabella.
We cannot hope to defeat Salandrian and the scions of Cenarian in direct combat, but we can disrupt their spells long enough for the House of Magic and the Royal Guardians to come to our aid.
Do you mean disrupt them with magic?
Exactly. Just as I tried to do the spell blocking my father's exit from the Royal Gardens. Except now, we are inside the perimeter of the spell. It should be more susceptible to disruption. A powerful enough counter spell could neutralize both that spell and the stasis spell entrapping our sorcerers. If this works, we still can turn the tide in our favor.
Kotarian continued to grip his knees and mused about what she was saying. Perhaps. It will be a tall order, but one within the realm of possibility. A spell that powerful will require time to prepare. As soon as we begin casting, Salandrian will sense what we are doing and will be upon us before we have time to complete our spell. Bok stepped forward. That is where I come in. He pointed to Isabella and Kotarian. You 2 cast the disruption spell. Aventil and his bow will hold off any attackers who come down the hall. The young noble held his bow high above his head.
Aye, they will.
Bok continued. As for Salandrian, he won't be able to attack if someone keeps him occupied. That someone must be me. I will confront Salandrian while the 3 of you stay here. Aventil ran to the door as if to physically block Bok from leaving the room.
Bok, he will kill you. Aventil is right. You cannot fight him alone.
Isabella gently grabbed Bok's sleeve.
I know you are angry with me. Please do not let that anger cause your death.
Wait. Bok held out both hands and backed away from Isabella and Aventil. Believe me, I have no wish to die today. But we need you and Kotarian to cast the disruption spell. Unless we can bring down the barriers, we are doomed anyway. Kotarian is right. As soon as Salandrian knows what we are doing, he will come here to stop us. I'm a serving-class son of a blacksmith, not a hero of legend, and I have no intention of dying a hero's death. But if I can divert his attention, just for a few minutes, that hopefully gives enough time to free our allies. It isn't just our best chance. It is our only chance.
I'll go with you, Aventil insisted. Together, we can take this snake down together.
With both of us gone, Isabella and Kotarian will be unprotected, Bok replied. Someone must hold the line here. Isabella's voice cracked.
Bok is right. This plan will work, but only if we all play our roles.
Kotarian and Aventil then stepped back, saying nothing more. As Bok checked his healer's bag, Aventil gave him an unexpected hug.
May your aim be true.
Kotarian took the pin from his jacket and handed it to Bok. Wear this, and be inspired to greatness. Bok pinned the medal to his own shirt. With you as a role model? How could I not? Ha! There may be hope for this one yet. Remember, I want that pin back when you are victorious. Agreed. There can be only one shining light.
Bok tapped the metal and smiled. I will bring this pin back to its rightful owner. He hoped his forced bravado wasn't too obvious. Isabella was right. This likely was a suicide mission, and he badly did not want to die. But he could see no other way to protect his family, friends, and the innocent people who would be crushed by Salandrian's cruel reign. Isabella approached Bok with open arms, looking to hug her friend, possibly for the last time. No. Bok held up his hands and took a step back. Where once he had been too shy and intimidated to meet her gaze, he now stared directly into her brown eyes. I just want to protect my family and my people from the threat of Salandrian and the scions of Cenarion. I don't care about the House of Magic, the royal palace, or your precious kingdom. Does your scorn, understandable though it may be, extend to me as well? Isabella shook her head vigorously and turned away from Bok. No, do not answer that. I may have earned it, but it would break my heart to hear you say as much. Bok paused. I can't hate Isabella. How could I, as kind as she has been to me? And yet, how could she lie about something so important? He took a step toward her. Isabella, Every second they waited gave Salandrian another chance to discover their hiding spot and end their fragile hope of success before they had a chance to try. My jumbled feelings and confused thoughts must wait. Fire up the forge. I have a job to do. He turned, drew his sword, and walked toward the door, where a hallway and a flight of steps would take him to the royal council chambers. End his confrontation with Salandrian. As do we all, Isabella said. Just know that I pray for your safe return, my friend. Well, that seems fraught with peril, doesn't it? That's right. Go, the least trained of all of you, and fight the big bad boss. That seems like a recipe for success. Now, don't get me wrong, we've seen that Bok has the ability to do some incredible things that nobody would have expected, such as combining folk and high magic into spells, which was pretty cool. So maybe he has a chance to make some things happen. I guess we will see, won't we? When we start into Chapter 47. A safe return was Bok's foremost concern as well as he raced down the hall toward the stairs leading down from the royal family's residential quarters to the royal council chambers and the more public areas of the palace. He hoped he could somehow delay and defend against Salandrian's attacks long enough for help to arrive. But that seems like an unlikely wish. He walked down the long white marble hall, hurrying but not rushing. Isabella and Kotarian would give him a few moments before starting their spell, and he didn't want to mistime his entrance into the chambers. Hand-woven rugs absorbed his footfalls. The only sound he heard was his nervous breathing. Small tables, hand-carved by artisans from across the kingdom, had been placed at regular intervals throughout the hall. Each displayed a few decorative items, a vase of fresh-cut flowers and some small potted plants. As he passed, Bok yanked a small cactus from one of the tables and stuffed it into his bag. Bok took another in a seemingly endless series of deep breaths. Then he walked down the polished stone steps to the antechamber of the royal council chambers. His hands trembled as he touched the rail. No building in Sola Valley even had stairs. He hadn't walked up or down stairs until he was 14 summers, when Weni Khan took him to the closest town to purchase supplies. The store they visited barely qualified as a 2-story building, and it wouldn't stand out at all in Ithanel, but young Bok thought it was the grandest place in the kingdom. He remembered the sweet store-bought candy he took home for his parents in Yatta. Strange, and even funny that now, of all times, such a mundane memory would pop into my head. Fingers tingling, he swung the double doors open carefully, in case any scion stood guard in the antechamber. But they didn't. The room was quiet and empty. He exhaled, but that only stirred up the butterflies in his stomach even more. He reached out for the handle of the front doors, then paused. Maybe going in through a side door would take the scions off guard. Besides, I'm serving class. I'll use the servant's entrance. Bok stopped in front of the heavy oak door and closed his eyes. No amount of calming breaths could force his mind and pulse to slow down. Salandrian waited inside the royal council chambers. Nowhere else such a power-hungry despot would go. My death could be on the other side of this door, too. This literally could be the last room I ever enter. He inhaled deeply one last time, wiped his sweaty palms on his pants, and pushed open the door. Bok rushed in, head low and eyes up, looking for scions. He found none. His footsteps echoed off the white marble ceiling of the expansive royal council chambers. The room was empty, except for one tall, handsome man in black and red relaxing in King Isbiano's chair in the center of the dais.
You? What? You are supposed to be dead!
The man tipped over his goblet when he bolted upright in his seat. Red wine spilled onto the floor. Bok turned to his right and locked eyes with Salandrian. The time for introspection had ended. Now, Bok would have to fight for his life. Upstairs, Isabella and Kotarian waited nervously to start the disruption spell. They heard no signs of commotion after Bok left the residential floor, which was good. At least they still had a few moments of peace to prepare to cast the most important spell of their lives. Isabella's stomach churned with anxiety. If this does not work... No, she would not dwell on failure. Her father depended on her. She thought of King Isbiano trapped outside their home, helpless to protect himself or their kingdom. She imagined his expression when he placed her mother's crown on her head in 5 summers' time. She already knew she was going to cry, regardless of royal etiquette. She then thought of Aventil, who had taken his bow and quiver into the hallway outside her room. He did not know this yet, but at some point, when the time felt right, they would have a grand royal wedding. She would wear a purple dress made by her favorite tailor and carry a bouquet of flowers from her mother's garden. Their children would have their father's good humor, and she would love them dearly. And she thought of Bok. Sweet Bok, the boy whose only mistake was daring to trust his princess. She wanted so much to tell him how much he meant to her, even if it was not the way he may have hoped. She wanted to tell him how sorry she was for causing him any pain. But to get that chance, she had to make this spell work.
Take the lead, Your Majesty. I will be ready when you are.
Kotarian began calling forth the magical energies at his command. She did the same, and bluish-green forces swirled around them like a summer storm.
Done. We have reached the crux of the matter, everyone. They will be fighting most soon. Most soon indeed. We will find what happens, shall we not? Now let us continue with a very, very hopeful.
Chapter 48.
I killed you. How are you here? Salandrian thundered. Never mind. I shall just have to kill you again.
Bok didn't respond with banter. Instead, he extended his hands and launched the most powerful flash-fire spell he could conjure. The flame's size and intensity surprised him. The spell caught Salandrian off balance. He blocked the blast with a shield spell. Barely.
How did you...
Bok had hoped to end the fight quickly, but he didn't hesitate when his first attack failed. He stuck his hand in his bag, retrieved the small cactus he'd grabbed in the hall, and threw it on the floor. When he used his combined magics on it, the plant instantly expanded and filled the space around the dais and Salandrian. Again, the sorcerer projected a shield spell, But this time, he only partially deflected the attack. Several of the rapidly growing spines ripped his black coat and slashed his arm and chest, knocking him to the floor in the process.
Ah! Curse you!
From a seated position, Salandrian gestured, and 8 spouts of fire, like miniature comets, streaked across the chambers in an arc. Bok projected a shield spell. To his surprise, the shield held. The small fiery projectiles exploded in a ball of flame against the shield. Bok could feel its heat even through his protective spell. The plant returned to its normal small size. Bok's attack had injured the sorcerer, but not nearly enough to incapacitate him. If anything, it made Salandrian more bloodthirsty than ever.
Who are you? How are you able to do this? You, who are nothing but a serving-class commoner.
Salandrian tapped his finger to his temple.
Ah, I have it. The healer and practitioner of folk magic story was just a ruse. You must be an agent of Tovano. I see his hand in the spells you cast. I bet he had you hiding and training in the far reaches of Imarinia. Well played, my old colleague. It is too bad Tovano didn't teach you enough to survive.
Salandrian lashed out with a push-pull spell, ripping an entire row of marble benches out of the marble floor and hurling them toward Bok. No shield spell Bok could conjure would stop thousands of pounds of flying stone, so he ducked to the side, barely avoiding being crushed. He landed awkwardly against a marble column and hit hard. For a moment his vision turned hazy. Only the sharp pain streaking down his left arm jolted him back awake and alert. Still, he needed time to recover. Time Salandrian wasn't inclined to grant him. As Bok fought for his life, Isabella felt more alive than ever. High magic swelled inside of her, building until she could feel it bursting from the pores of her skin. In the corner of her sight, she glimpsed herself in the mirror. Without realizing it, she had levitated several inches above the floor, lifted off the ground by the power of the counterspell. She and Kotarian moved their hands in circular patterns, repeating the incantation in barely a whisper. Isabella continued to build and build the magic until it became painful, until it practically forced its way out of her soul. She now shouted the words to the incantation, but did not stop chanting. This is marvelous. I understand why magic can seduce a man like Salandrian. But such power must be used for the good of all. Finally, she could take no more. She nodded to Kotarian, and he unleashed the force of his spell. She did the same, and a blue-green wave pulsed across her bedroom, lighting it up like a flare. The magic swept through the palace and beyond, stretching across the entire block. Then something truly incredible happened. The wall enclosing the palace blinked, then vanished. Likewise, the stasis spell imprisoning the House of Magic disappeared. The people who had been frozen in place resumed their movements, although confused by what they had experienced. From the courtyard she heard a guardian shout, "The barrier is down! To the palace!" Isabella laughed out loud as she looked out her bedroom window. The spell worked. Bok's courage granted us enough time. Hold on, my friend. Help is coming. Now, she and Kotarian had to sustain the spell long enough for their allies to enter the fight. As she had done in so many lonely study sessions, Isabella bit her lower lip, clenched her fists, and concentrated anew. Bok's left shoulder took the brunt of the landing. After the shock subsided, he touched it and winced. Dislocated at best, probably fractured. His left arm would be useless in the rest of the fight, if there even was much more of a battle. The blow also dislodged both his healer's bag and his sword, which lay on the floor between him and the dais, leaving Bok weaponless. Salandrian floated down from the dais, a greenish-blue aura filling the spacious chambers. He looked every bit the angry god he claimed to be. Bok lashed out again with another flash fire spell, but Salandrian was prepared this time and slapped it aside, as effortlessly as a horse would swat a fly with its tail. Any advantage Bok had gained through surprise now was gone. Salandrian stepped forward slowly, not from caution, but with total confidence that he now had the situation under control.
So, who are you really? I know everyone in the kingdom who has the acumen for high magic, and I don't know you.
He sauntered over to take a closer look at Bok, who staggered to stay upright after being slammed into the benches. Salandrian furrowed his forehead and squinted, then shook his head.
No, never seen you before.
Salandrian smiled at the quivering young man before him.
You carry the stink of the serving class upon you, no matter your true origins. Again, who are you? The quest for long-lost information fascinates me. Reveal the secret behind your mysterious appearance, and I shall show you mercy. Now, I must be honest, you still are going to die. But tell me who you are, and I will make your death quick.
Salandrian's hands began to glow greenish-blue as he prepared his next spell. Bok's entire body trembled. Images, not words, ran through his mind in those next 2 seconds, as Salandrian intended to deliver the fatal blow up close. He thought of his family's simple home in Sola Valley. Mother, father, Yata, and Noji sat at their unpolished pine table, staring at bowls of food they could barely touch. At one point, his father put his hand over his face, while his gray-faced mother turned away, unable to look at her grieving husband. Then his mind went to Aventil, Tovano, Kotarian, Wingate, and Corrigan. After Bok fell, Salandrian turned his attention to Bok's friends. They all fought valiantly. They put up much more of a struggle than a fledgling high mage user from the serving class did, but they still died under the might of Salandrian and his scions. And then his thoughts went to Isabella. She, too, would die, unless Salandrian decided to keep the princess as a prisoner. He imagined her in a filthy prison cell, dressed in ragged, dirty clothes, her already small frame shriveled from the lack of food. All her spark had been extinguished as she mutely gripped her cell's iron bars. I can't accept any of these outcomes. I don't know what to do or if I have a prayer of winning, but I will do everything I can to save the people I love.
Who am I?
Bok stood as tall as he could through his pain, fatigue, and fear. Just a blacksmith's boy. Salandrian rolled his eyes to the ceiling.
Ha! A liar until the end. We both know a simple blacksmith's boy could not possess the acumen. But while I am a curious person, I have grown bored of this game. So I will now.
Salandrian held his hands in front of his face, his mouth open. He stared at his fingers as if they held a secret clue to an unsolved mystery.
What is happening?
The blue-green energy around him dimmed, blinked, and then disappeared. The most powerful practitioner of high magic in the 5 Seas now found himself unable to tap into the source of his might. Isabella and Kotarian had disrupted his magic. My friends, they did the impossible. And now it was Bok's turn to smile. Ah, very good. I wouldn't have thought that would have disrupted his magic, but hey, who am I to say? Who am I to know? I am not the author. I am just a humble narrator here to provide you with joy and rapture as we read this story together. Hopefully you are enjoying the tale. It is a tale told by me, written by Bruce Buchanan, the book available on Amazon. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, let us continue, shall we? As we dive into Chapter 49, Given a second opportunity, Bok charged the true leader before the man could regain his composure. He slammed into Salandrian with his full might. The impact sent waves of agony through Bok's injured shoulder, but at this point, desperation and hope fueled his body and he focused past the pain. He had to restrain Salandrian before the sorcerer regained his magic. The men tumbled to the stone floor and Salandrian's face struck the white marble tile, bloodying his cheek. Meanwhile, Bok's hand slammed hard into the floor. He yelled as hot pain ran up his arm, as if he had stuck it into a hornet's nest. His hand swelled almost immediately. Bok grabbed his right hand with his left and gingerly felt the small bones. Broken. Then something hot stung him below the ribs and sucked the air from his lungs. Bok looked down to see the hilt of Salandrian's dagger protruding from his side. A red circle appeared on his white tunic, small at first but spreading quickly. Bok gasped for breath as he stumbled on Fawn's legs. His eyes squeezed shut, then opened widely. A moan might have escaped his lips. He wasn't sure. "It's not fair. I cheated death from Salandrian's magic only to die from a stupid dagger." He touched his hand to his side, and it came back warm and wet. He looked down. His loose-fitting white tunic turned red at an alarming rate. The damp fabric stuck to his skin. Nausea flooded his abdomen as he clutched his wound. From his back, Salandrian then kicked Bok in the face, sending him sprawling backward. Salandrian grabbed the edge of the dais and pulled himself back to his feet, albeit unsteadily. The would-be world conqueror stared at Bok through swollen eyes, blood trickling down the side of his face. His chest, like Bok's, heaved for air that would not come quickly enough. Instead of an easy slaughter, as Salandrian had predicted, he'd received an absolute war. Unfortunately, Bok's wounds were far worse. Still on his back, he grabbed the blade's hilt, his face snarling in pain as he pulled it from his body. He tried pulling himself up, but his mind went dark. He rested his head against the chamber floor, leaving a red puddle on the white marble. Don't think it got internal organs, but I'll still bleed to death." Bok closed his eyes, unable to move and waiting for darkness to engulf him. Then he heard the most astonishing noise, one that opened his eyes and forced him to an upright seated position. He strained his ears. The sound was faint at first, and he had trouble being sure it was real above his gasps for air. But the noise became louder and louder until he was certain. He heard the house of magic sorcerers and royal guardians storming the palace, the shouts of encouragement and instruction, the concussion of impact spells hitting their target, and the scions' cries of surprise at the attack's ferocity. Salandrian heard the sounds too. He turned his attention away from Bok and looked out the room's gold-framed panel window. Bok couldn't see what Salandrian saw, but the sorcerer's hand covered his mouth at the sight. Happy tears swelled in Bok's eyes. "I have said before, I'm not some great warrior or even a real sorcerer. I'm just a country healer from Sola Valley, but my loved ones will be safe, and nothing you can do will change that." Salandrian frantically looked from side to side, but no solution was forthcoming. Bok was correct. Even with Salandrian's vast powers, he and his scions of Cenarion could not defeat the combined forces of the House of Magic and the Royal Guard. You have ruined everything," he raged. "Everything!" Still woozy from their battle, Salandrian stumbled toward his downed opponent. Bok inched backward in a vain attempt to put additional distance between himself and Salandrian, a slick red trail trailing behind him. "I was supposed to rule. I deserved it. Not that backstabber Lunarian, or that half-wit Caragian, but you took that from me, and I'm going to kill you for it." Salandrian's hands once again crackled, and the disruption spell had done its job, but it also had run its course. Magic once again functioned inside the palace walls, and Salandrian quickly was regaining his might. He raised both fists above his head. The magical energy surrounding his body molded into the shape of a giant mallet. Now, on his hands and knees, Bok could not defend against such a blow. Salandrian's attack would crush even his best shield. I have but one chance, if I can bring myself to do it. He spoke the brief incantation for the death touch spell, just as Isabella had taught him. His broken right hand screamed in agony when he grabbed Salandrian's left thigh, sending mystic energy surging into the sorcerer's body like so many lightning bolts. Salandrian again had underestimated the young man's resourcefulness and resolve, for when he cast his attacking spell, intending to crush the life out of Bok, he too was unable to cast a shielding spell. The hammer spell dissipated. Defenseless, Salandrian spasmed, his eyes wide for a second. Then he crumpled to the floor, oblivious to all around him. There, Salandrian's face and body shimmered and blurred. When the cocoon of magical energy disappeared, Bok saw the man had resumed the form he had worn in the royal council meeting. The true leader's square chin and thick head of hair morphed back into a pasty, jowly face and a patchy, bald scalp, his real appearance. True to form, Salandrian had proven to be a deceiver until the end. But was it the end? Salandrian deserved 100 deaths for the cruelty he had inflicted, but Bok did not want to deliver that judgment. Killing would never be comfortable to him. That is why, at the last second, he held back on the amount of energy he had sent coursing into Salandrian's body. He crawled over to the fallen sorcerer. The unconscious man's chest still moved up and down. Salandrian still lived. Bok had defeated him without taking his life, just as he intended. But he'll be the only survivor if I don't get help soon. Bok touched the cut in his side again. It still bled rapidly. His vision blurred, and he found it difficult to even lift his chin off his chest. My healer's bag. In it were bandages, clotting powders, salves to slow the bleeding, and the satchel lay on the floor, only 15 or so feet away. It tempted and taunted Bok through the fog of his failing eyesight. Bok lunged toward it, then crumpled when his arms gave out. He collapsed on the hard chamber floor like a child's doll whose owner had lost interest in playing. 15 feet away. Might as well be 15 miles. No, I'll get it. Just as soon as I close my eyes and rest for a moment. Oh, Bok. Does Bok survive? Oh, no, ladies and gentlemen. Whatever is going to happen here, we must be okay. I believe in him. I believe Bok will be fine. He will survive. Yes, Bok will survive. That is the story. That is the goal. Will it happen? Only Bruce shall know. Or we will as soon as we start reading again, because, it is almost time for us to continue our live read. Let me go check to see if anybody has posted any comments that I need to reply to. No one on Rumble, no one on X, no one on Kik, no one on YouTube, no one on Twitch. It appears to me that no one has posted comments for me to reply to. Either that means the book is going well, or you just have no feel of a need to respond, and that is okay too. And now, are you guys ready? We will pick it up in our next chapter when we start Chapter 50. For Imarinia! For King Isbiano! The royal guard burst through the front doors of the palace and spilled into the main dining hall. The scions of Cenarion took positions behind overturned tables. But the sorcerers of the House of Magic also entered the scene through the side door and outflanked the scions. Wingate charged to the front of the line. He dodged underneath a projectile spell and deflected a sword blow with his shield. He leaped over a table and cut down a scion sorcerer with one blow, opening a hole in the scion's line of defense. King Isbiano insisted on accompanying his royal guardians in their effort to retake the palace. "It is my home, and I cannot ask anyone to risk their lives in an effort I am not willing to undertake myself." Sword in hand, he yelled words of encouragement to Wingate and his well-trained guardians. The scions, all of whom were acolyte-level sorcerers, floundered against experienced house spellcasters. The royal guardians skillfully picked their opportunities and struck when the scions were preoccupied with defending against magical attacks. Within moments, King Isbiano's forces reduced the scions to just 10 sorcerers and soldiers. "Fall back! Fall back!" Don Landrian screamed to the remaining scions. Still casting a shield spell, she pointed the dwindling band of insurgents toward the stairwell. "The true leader's in the royal council chambers, and he has the power to destroy all our enemies. We will still—" A blue-green lightning bolt cut her final words short. Isabella stood at the top of the stairs, her hand glowing with magical energy. 2 armed scion soldiers spun toward the stairs, shocked by the attack coming from their rear. One of Aventil's arrows zinged through the opening in one man's helmet. Kotarian froze the other to the spot with Falarian's frigid fatality. He then looked around at his colleagues, routing the scions with a variety of magics. "At least there are others who remain true to the house. Perhaps I should be nicer to them upon my return." With that, the final members of the scions left standing dropped their swords, raised their arms, and surrendered. Members of the royal guard quickly shackled them and led them away to the Ithanel constabulary, where they would be held under tight security until they could be brought on trial for charges of treason. The rebellion against Emerenia had ended. The victory came at a cost, however. 6 royal guardians and 2 House of Magic sorcerers died in the battle. Another 20 suffered injuries of various degrees, from sprained ankles to life-threatening burns. Kotarian pointed to a neatly arranged ring of roses, nightshade, and charcoal in the corner of the hall. "Look at this. They were preparing another blight spell when we arrived." Aventil put his hand to his face. "And the king and his royal guard were its intended targets. Had we not broken their spell—" "But we did, my rich friend. See, the king is hale and hearty." After ensuring that the wounded were receiving care, Isbiano pushed his way through the ruined dining hall. Isabella ran down the stairs to meet him. "Oh, father, I feared that—" Unable to finish, she buried her head into his chest and pulled him in tightly. "You know I could not do that to you, dear daughter." He brushed the princess's hair from her face. "I am proud of you, Isabella. You and your friends have saved our kingdom." "That means more to me than you can ever know, father. But unfortunately, our work is not yet done." "Salandrian," Aventil hissed. "Yes, we cannot celebrate our victory until he is brought to justice." "And until we know Bok is safe," Isabella insisted. Isbiano pursed his lips. "Bok, the young healer from Solar Valley. What does he have to do with this?" Isabella's voice trembled. "Everything, father. I pray his courage did not bring about his sacrifice." At the king's command, the small army of sorcerers and guards stomped up the steps, with Isabella, Aventil, and Kotarian leading the way. When they entered the antechamber of the royal council chambers, Isabella and Aventil, bow in hand, ran to the double doors, but Kotarian raised his palm.
Wait. Behind those doors is the most powerful sorcerer Emerenia has known in 300 summers. We must remain cautious. And believe me, I do not say that lightly.
You accursed spellweaver! Bok is in there with that demon. If there is a chance he still lives.
Believe me, Aventil, I take no pleasure in saying this, but we must assume that our friend is already gone.
Kotarian folded his hands at his waist and sighed heavily.
Creak!
One of the double doors slowly opened. The guardians drew their swords as a single unit. Every sorcerer chanted, illuminating the antechamber with blue-green magical energy. The king held up his fist, waiting to give the command to attack. Then a young man in blood-soaked servant's clothes wobbled out into the light. "Bok!" Isabella shrieked. "Oh, praise the Exalted One! You are alive!" Aventil grabbed Bok's arm and gently lowered him to a chair.
"You are a most welcome sight, my friend. But Salandrian—"
"In there, unconscious," Bok croaked. "Might want to bind his hands and gag his mouth before he wakes." Good thing I reached my healer's bag. Still, I'm getting blood on the king's good furniture. Probably shouldn't do that. Having ducked into the council chambers, Wingate stuck his head out the open door.
"Is correct, your majesty. Salandrian is in royal guard custody, and we have Mr. Omat to thank." "By Lenorian's laborious lectures, the peasant won!"
Kotarian put his hands on his knees and chuckled. He even smiled at Bok. At Isabella's direction, a guardian brought Bok a goblet of cold water. Although thirsty, Bok almost was too exhausted to drink. He visibly winced when he reached for the cup with his broken right hand. "Get this man to the infirmary!" Isabella grabbed a guardian by his uniform shirt. "You there! Take him now!" "Wait! Please!" Bok's mind remained foggy, but he focused his thoughts as best as he could. "I need to say something first." Isabella crouched beside him. "Go on. I am listening." "No, not to you, Isabella. To your father." He pointed to the king.
"To me?"
Isbiano raised his eyebrows.
"Very well, young man. What do you wish to say?"
The king joined Isabella, Aventil, and Coragian in crowding around Bok, waiting to hear the young peasant's words. The others kept their distance, out of respect for the king's privacy. Bok paused. "I am a serving-class boy. Who am I to make demands of the king? But Isbiano has to hear this, in case I don't survive." He cleared his throat. "Tell the truth, your majesty. Tell the truth to the kingdom about the acumen for high magic." Isbiano looked to his daughter, who locked eyes with his. "Let Bok speak, father. He has paid for that right and loyalty." The king simply nodded in agreement for Bok to continue. "I am serving class, yet I was born with the acumen, as I proved just now, and I use those abilities to defeat Salandrian and save your life, your majesty. There are others like me, working in the factories and on the farms. They deserve the same opportunity."
What you say is not a simple thing."
Isbiano spoke in a low voice, so that the others in the room could not hear.
"Surely you must recognize—"
Isabella interrupted the king. "Bok is right, father. I defied you to represent the kingdom on this mission so that I may learn to lead. But I also received a lesson in the potential of the Emerenian people. All of them. We discussed this issue before, and I deferred to your judgment. Now I am asking you to trust mine." She took Isbiano's arm in her hand. "For generations our family has feared a threat that did not exist. That the serving class would rise against the crown if they knew the truth about high magic. In doing so, we ignored the real danger growing right inside these walls. Salandrian is a noble and a dean in the House of Magic, yet he tried to kill us all, and a serving-class man from Solar Valley would have died to protect us."
Isbiano placed his hand on his daughter's shoulders. "Your words shame me, Isabella. I should not need my daughter to remind me of what is right and what is wrong. But you have, and for that, I am grateful."
Isbiano then turned to Bok.
"Which is why I vow I will take care of you and your family, young man, and your community. We will devote more resources to Solar Valley and the serving class in general. I promise I will work toward fairer, more equitable conditions for all our citizens."
He then looked away, not able to meet Bok's eyes.
"But I am afraid what you ask is not possible. Perhaps one day it will be, but today is not that day. Revealing the truth about the Ackerman would divide our society and threaten our prosperity. I truly am sorry, Bok, but my answer is no."
I save his life, save his crown, and still I'm just a peasant to our king. It is all I will ever be to him, or those like him. Bok wanted to look Isbiano in the eyes and tell him as much, but the king's face began to swirl, and Bok's vision became clouded. Perhaps I am hurt worse than I thought.
Just maybe. Those are the surprising things that happen, my friends. The surprising things. Here we go. Let us continue right away with Chapter 51. The Battle of Ithanel was done, but the Crown Princess of Emerenia had never been busier, starting immediately after the battle. Her first responsibilities were to the wounded and dead. She and her father spent hours in the infirmary visiting with the patients well enough to receive them and the families of those who were not. In the days to come, they would receive the grieving survivors of those killed in the battle, which they learned included 3 staff members slain by the Scions for refusing to cooperate. Such a small request is the least we can do for them. Then there was a matter of the royal palace itself. The main dining hall and the royal council chamber sustained significant damage during the battle. Workers already were busy to ensure the building remained structurally safe, with extensive repairs taking place in the weeks to come. Isabella admittedly knew nothing about building construction, but while her father held emergency meetings with the remaining members of the royal council, he tasked her with overseeing this important job. She put in long, late hours to learn it. And finally, she volunteered to help rebuild Emerenia's House of Magic, which lost all its top leaders in the revolt. Isabella decided to schedule a meeting later in the week with some key house sorcerers, those who were more open-minded than many of their peers. She had a few ideas she wanted to share with them. So much to do. By the end of the evening, Isabella's head throbbed and her feet ached. She knew she would be asleep as soon as she crawled under the covers. Her bedroom next to her study called to her. As she rubbed her temples and mustered the energy to stand up from her desk, there came a soft knock at the study door. She acknowledged it, and Wingate stepped inside the room.
"Lieutenant, it is good to see you. All is well here, so you and your colleagues can resume." "Oh, Wingate, I am so sorry."
The giant man's expression never changed, but somehow she knew what he had come to tell her. "Yes, Your Majesty. It is my sad duty to inform you that a messenger just arrived from Nassim. Commander Corrigan has been found nearby, along with Kaz Kozan."
"Loyalty above all,"
she whispered. Corrigan had been a constant presence around the palace since before she was born. Isabella grew up under his watch. As a young girl, she feared the gruff guardian, but as she got older, so did her appreciation for his role in making the royal palace a safe, comfortable home for her family. And now he was gone. She realized when Corrigan had not returned that this was the most likely outcome.
but having it confirmed brought a lump to her throat. To her surprise, after a brief pause, Wingate continued. Your Majesty, I realize this is a difficult time for your family and the kingdom, but with your permission, I wish to go to Nassim and recover Commander Corrigan. Isabella squeezed his taut forearm. Any greater show of affection would have made Wingate uncomfortable. Bring him home, my friend. Meanwhile, Bok recovered in the infirmary, an entire wing at the back of the palace's second floor. After receiving treatment from a healer, he received his own room, an honor typically reserved for the highest-ranking nobles, rather than being housed with the other wounded patients in the ward. He normally would have balked at the special treatment, but feeling as poorly as he did, he accepted the gift. He already began to get stronger within a few days. Before long, the boredom of staying in bed for hours on end outweighed the pain of his stab wound, injured shoulder, and broken hand. Isabella and Aventil came by regularly to check on him. The way she clung to his arm and how he leaned his body against hers made it clear their relationship was stronger than ever. And I couldn't be happier, because my friends are happy again. Kotarian also visited. Please understand, peasant turned patient, I am not making any extra effort to see you. I just happen to be on this floor. Bok grinned. Of course, but since you are here, a kind nurse delivered a bottle of wine in that bag, along with 2 glasses. I would offer to share, but if you are in a hurry. I suppose my business here could wait a few more moments? Kotarian raised his eyebrows and reached into the bag. You were telling me the other day about the first spell you employed against Salandrian. Not a bad choice for a novice, but let me explain what you should have done instead. Late on the 4th evening of his infirmary stay, Isabella came along, bringing a small wooden chest with an ornately decorated lid. Bok, I am sorry it has taken me all day to visit. She sighed as she pulled a chair to his bedside. Many things require my attention, and I never have enough time. But I suppose that is my duty. Isabella, you don't always have to carry the burden of Emerinia's national morale. Bok pushed himself up to a seated position. It is okay to get frustrated. Just don't let it become a defining characteristic, as with Kotarian. Ha! Well, in that case, in the strictest of confidences, I have no idea why it should take so many months to complete the repairs. The first floor of the palace will look like a rock quarry for the foreseeable future. Bok grinned. Maybe we go back to the old ways. You could order the foreman hung by his ankles in the Great Bazaar. The thought has crossed my mind. Do not dare repeat that, she laughed. In truth, I should be grateful. Bok put up his hand. Stop right there. You expressed your frustration. How do you feel? Isabella put a knuckle under her chin. Surprisingly better. Thank you, my friend. I hadn't expected to receive the gift of clarity, but I did bring a surprise for you. She held out the box for him, and Bok set it on his lap. Inside were 5 handcrafted, highly detailed wooden dolls, each representing a monarch from Emerinia's past. The paint on the dolls was worn in spots where little fingers had played with them. They were mine as a child. My parents gave them to me in my 6th summer. I thought your nephew Noji might like to have them. Would he like to have them? I cannot imagine a more priceless treasure for a small child. On their own, they cost far more than his family could afford. That they were a personal gift from the princess only magnified their value exponentially. Not that any of the Omats would entertain an offer for them. Bok gently closed the lid. I cannot accept such a gift. What if you and Aventil have children one day? Won't you want them to have these toys? I have no shortage of treasures to pass down to future generations, Bok. It is one of the benefits of being a princess.
You certainly have enough pillows to share with Inishari descendants for centuries to come, Bok joked. You have but one head. What do you need enough pillows on your bed to supply all of Sola Valley?
Isabella waved a finger at him. If I recall, those pillows saved your life. Perhaps you should buy me a few more as a thank you.
Their laughter, uneasy at first, became an uncontrollable roar, to the point that the knife wound in Bok's side barked at him to stop. Ow! Well, Noji will cherish them as much as you did. These dolls may even earn me a brief reprieve from Yatta's sharp tongue.
I need to meet Yatta. As an only child, I used to dream about having a companion with whom I could share adventures, as you did with your sister.
Bok rolled his eyes. Well, be warned. Big sisters play rough. But yes, I would love for you to meet Yatta, and I know she would be honored.
As would I.
Their laughter subsided, and Isabella looked up at the ceiling to consider her next words.
Oh, Bok, I never meant to hurt you, my friend. But I deceived you, and I am so—
Wait. Do not apologize. Bok hugged his knees to his chest. Please, Isabella. That apology already has been given, accepted, and forgotten. He leaned up in his hospital bed and pushed a pillow under his back for support. Do you remember what happened at the start of this adventure? When those wolves attacked, I became paralyzed with fear, precisely when you and Aventil needed me. You had every right then to send me home in disgrace, or at a minimum to never trust me again. Instead, you remained kind and supportive, as you have treated me from the beginning. Then I find out you are not a perfect princess after all. You made a mistake in not telling me the truth. Yes, I was upset, but you did so to protect your father. Would I also lie to protect my family? I suspect I would. And I have little to lose by sharing a secret that would shake Emerenia to its core. You, on the other hand, have been entrusted with our nation's safety. Of course you would be conflicted by such a choice. So if you aren't perfect, what is left? A loyal daughter, a brave defender of the kingdom, a scholar who never stops learning, and the best friend I could ever hope to have. Isabella hesitated before speaking.
Bok, I do not know what to say, other than I am more grateful than you can ever know for those words. But I do not wish to avoid responsibility for my actions because I am the crown princess.
Bok smiled warmly. Believe me, I will never tell you what you wish to hear just to curry favor with our monarch-to-be. It's not like I'm on the invitation list for the Grand Merchant's Gala. Isabella, you never held your status over me. How could I ever hold it against you? A healer timidly stuck his head inside the room, waiting until Isabella invited him to enter. When she did, he gave Bok a chalice of bitter herb tea to drink. Bok decided it was better to quaff the brew quickly, rather than linger on getting it down. This will help him rest, Your Majesty. The healer bowed to Isabella as he backed out of the room. Isabella leaned back in her chair.
I'm glad we had this chance to visit, just the two of us, without fending for our lives against magic-crazed wolves or Masok marauders.
The herbal tea took effect quickly. Bok grew drowsier by the moment. I know. And I'm glad too. Shh. She took his hand in hers. Just rest. They sat in silence as Bok became increasingly groggy. He fell asleep with Isabella still holding his hand. Chapter 52. Bok was discharged from care after a week. He remained at the infirmary for 2 additional weeks, working alongside the palace's healers to tend to the women and men wounded in the Battle of Ithanel,
as it had been named. The infirmary's healers practiced folk magic, but unlike Bok, they were from the landowning class and had been trained through a formal course of study in Ithanel. He worried they may look down on a country healer, but the crew readily welcomed his help. He even learned a few new techniques, such as a specific healing spell for burns, which proved invaluable in treating victims of fire spells. If he could ever find a place in the capital city, Bok could see it being in the palace infirmary. There was also the solemn matter of Corrigan's funeral. One afternoon, Aventil came to the infirmary to inform Bok that Wingate had returned, and the burial would take place 2 days hence. "I know you did not bring clothes for the funeral. I'll have something sent to your room." Sure enough, when Bok returned to his quarters, he found a long, dark green robe draped across his bed. Dark green represented the natural cycle of inevitable death and renewed life in Imerenian culture. Bok lifted the fine garment to examine it. Yet another kindness from Aventil. I'm still not sure what I've done to deserve such friends. The funeral took place early in the morning, another Imerenian tradition. Bok was thankful for it on a day of Corrigan's burial. Autumn was coming, and the summer heat soon would ebb a bit, but the last days of summer still would be miserably hot. The early morning funeral also meant Bok had to rise before the sun to travel across the city. He walked to the stable to retrieve Becky, who had returned to the palace as healthy as ever. He fed her an apple and brushed her mane. Bok marveled at how the farm animal, used to pulling plows and hauling corn, had performed on their adventure. The people of the palace probably say the same thing about me. He took Becky to the front of the palace, looking to orient himself in the still confusing cityscape. He knew the funeral was to the north, and... "There you are, Bok. Come, ride with us." Aventil trotted down the red brick street riding his prized stallion, as he and Isabella waited in front of the palace's main gate. She wore a simple forest green dress. A tiara threaded with green ribbon pulled her hair off her face. Her familiar 5 bracelets hung around her right wrist. If anyone could look radiant at a funeral, it would be Imerenia's crown princess. Wingate and 2 more guardians rode behind Isabella and Aventil. The final time he would serve as her personal bodyguard. Following the funeral, he would become commander of the Royal Guard, as Corrigan had intended. "We wondered where you were," Aventil added. "We didn't want to leave without you." He motioned to Bok to join the group. "With you? And the princess? I have no formal standing in the palace. I will just be out of place." "Nonsense. First off, despite Her Majesty's presence, this is an informal procession. We both want you to come with us. But most importantly, you were a friend of Corrigan, as was I. He would want you to ride with us." So Bok did. "Shall we leave now, Your Majesty?" If anything, Wingate was quieter and more reserved than usual. "Just one more moment, Wingate. We still await one more." As if on cue, Kotarian rode around the corner. "We can depart now. I have arrived." He had traded his gray jacket for a dark green robe, but still wore his house pin. "I'm glad you were here, Kotarian." And Bok meant it with full sincerity. "Of course you are. You may gaze upon me with wonder, Baron Blacksmith." With that, they were on their way. Bok's emotions tingled in mourning for their fallen friend, relief at having survived, and elation over their victory. Regardless, he was glad they could be together again. The slain Royal Council members received lavish funerals, with their caskets paraded through the streets of Ithanel and proclamations honoring the dead by King Isbiano himself. Corrigan, on the other hand, was buried in a simple graveside service at a small hillside cemetery on Ithanel's north side. The king attended, but did not speak. He and Isabella stood at attention as numerous guardians honored their fallen commander with brief, unscripted remarks. Concise and honest. Corrigan would have had it no other way. Bok watched silently as the plain casket was lowered into the ground. As he prepared to return to the palace, a loud, shrill voice immediately behind him made him jump. "Hello there, Bok. You ain't leaving till I get a hug from the hero of the Battle of Ethanel." "Umrah?" He turned to meet her, but at first he wasn't sure he saw the same servant girl from Nassim. She had traded her threadbare work clothes for a dark green dress similar to Isabella's. Her normally wild hair was combed and pulled back from her scrubbed clean face. She looks, well, breathtaking. "Look at you, all fancied up. I reckon we both present okay when we borrow clothes from our rich friends." She flashed a broad smile. "Tavano and I got into town this morning, just in time to get changed and come over here. Can ya believe it? I've got my own room at the Royal Palace, and I'll be working on the 4th floor. Me!" "Ha! The royal family has no idea of the hurricane that is incoming. Careful, Bok, or you might get caught in the storm, too." She put a fist up to his chin in a mocking threat. After a shared grin, they looked around the well-kept lawn of the cemetery, at the freshly dug grave and the flower-covered casket beside it. "Poor Corrigan. I didn't get to know him well, but I wish I had. A brave soul, that one." Bok nodded. He was a difficult person to get to know, but I learned so much from him. I leaned on the wisdom he shared when we faced Salandrian. Umra clapped her hands against her thighs. "Now, that's a story I want to hear." Bok shared how the king and the House of Magic had been imprisoned, how the group nearly died in the passageway leading to the royal palace, and how they had worked together to defeat Salandrian and the Scions. "Anyway, I got extremely lucky that day." "You were more than lucky, Bok. You were brave, too. I must be truthful. I didn't know you had that in you. You're full of surprises, Blacksmith's boy." His face blushed. "Well, I recall a barmaid turned housekeeper saving all our lives, so I'm not the only one capable of surprises." "No, you certainly aren't." With that, Umra placed her hand on the side of Bok's neck and kissed him. She closed her eyes and her lips lingered on Bok's. "Don't lose that spark. Do you hear me?" Bok's heart raced as he took Umra's hand. He scrambled to think of a response. Then Tovano hobbled up, leaning on a plain wooden cane for support.
"Umra, if you would be so kind as to wait for me at the wagon, I would like a word in private with Mr. Omat."
Bok couldn't help but roll his eyes at the sorcerer's terrible timing. Umra walked away. "That was a nice moment. You owe me another one soon." She winked over her shoulder at Bok, who waved to the palace's newest royal assistant. "I certainly hope so." Tavano then motioned to Bok to sit with him on a bench near a cluster of graves.
"I am still regaining my strength. Salandrian and his scions took great delight in tormenting me, and they were quite efficient in their work."
Bok didn't look at the sorcerer, choosing to stare across the fenced-in graveyard. "I am truly sorry for that, Tavano. That should not happen to anyone."
"I'm glad you feel that way, Bok. I was worried that you might try to finish the job the Scions began."
Tovano joked.
"I know you are angry with me for deceiving you, but you must understand, I had good reason."
"You're serving class too, aren't you, Tovano?" The words hung in the humid air for a moment. Now it was Tovano's turn to look away from Bok. He sighed.
"Serving class. I haven't been called that in more than 50 summers. But yes, I am. Just like you, Bok Omat.
I have never told anyone this story, not King Isbiano, not Princess Isabella, not my colleagues when I was a member of the House of Magic. But I shall tell you now." He leaned back on the bench and cleared his throat. "I grew up in a farming community in eastern Imarinia, not far from Fawcett. My mother worked as a servant in the house of a minor lord who owned the farmland surrounding it. I was raised in the manor, helping my mother with her long list of daily chores. I did well in school, but I've ceased my formal education at 10 summers because the Lord needed an extra set of hands, preferably one he didn't have to pay like an adult servant. Still, I figured it was better than working the fields, and he didn't mind if I borrowed books from his study, as long as I had finished my daily work." Tovano's rheumy eyes stared across the graveyard as he continued to reminisce. A songbird perched on a nearby tombstone. Its cheerful chirps took Bok's mind to Sola Valley, but he continued to listen. Tovano scratched his beard and tapped his cane against the lawn. "I assumed I'd found my lot in life. I would work in service to this noble until I was too old for physical labor. But fate had different plans, I suppose. Although not born with the acumen, the lord of the manor had a fascination with high magic, so he would pay a hefty honoraria to house sorcerers to travel to his estate and demonstrate spells. One of these demonstrations took place when I was 14 summers. The sorcerer, named Jalithian, began her presentation with Apollonian's prodigious presence. It's a spell that allows the user to grow to heights of more than 20 feet tall. The room we were in had a vaulted ceiling, but once she cast the spell, Jalithian's head brushed against the ceiling's apex. When Jalithian spoke the incantation, the words, which must have seemed like so much nonsense to everyone else in attendance, made sense to me, like pieces of broken glass forming a mosaic. I said nothing, but I knew I shouldn't understand." Bok shuffled on the hard stone bench and nodded. Few serving-class people had the acumen for high magic, but they all understood the need to hold their tongues around nobles. "After everyone left, I recreated her spell in the empty room, carefully repeating each word precisely as she had said it. And whoosh! I shot up to the ceiling, bumping my head so hard that I nearly passed out. But I did what the nobles said was impossible. I, a young man of the serving class, performed high magic." "Just like I did at Nassim. He must have been as confused as I was." Bok smoothed out the wrinkles in his robe. Its smooth, cool fabric hung awkwardly on his body. "Unfortunately, in my youthful excitement, I didn't pay as much attention to the counterspell Jalithian used to shrink back to her normal size." Tovano chuckled until he coughed into his hand. "I yelled for help, and both my mother and the lord of the manor came running. The spell wore off momentarily, and I returned to normal. But the lord saw what I had done, and knew I was a threat to the social order. So he immediately took me to Queen Idalia, King Isbiano's mother. She ordered that papers be drafted, creating a backstory to cover why I had been raised in a serving class home. Something to the effect that I was born to noble class parents who died in a tragic accident, and my serving class mother agreed to raise me as her own. And no one in the royal palace bothered to investigate. And why would they? The explanation validated their view of the world, so they asked no questions.
Bok furrowed his brow. But why wouldn't you say anything? Why would you go along with this lie? Tovano shook his head, looking away from the young healer.
At first, I went along because the queen quietly made sure my mother lived a comfortable life. She received a small piece of land and a generous pension, payment to ensure her silence. To be honest, I didn't visit as much as I could have after I entered the House of Magic and a life in the noble class.
His voice trailed off momentarily.
I enjoyed my new life too much to be bothered thinking about the one I had left behind.
Bok clenched his fists in his lap. But you didn't just lie to yourself, Tovano. You lied to me, too, knowing how much your deception would hurt me.
I did.
Tovano exhaled deeply and slowly.
I am not proud of it, but you speak the truth.
The truth? Do you believe that you can declare yourself an honest man now, and that erases your past lies?
No, I don't believe it erases the lies I've told to you and to many more before you. Nor do I expect you to forgive me. But at the moment, honesty is almost all I have to offer.
Well, you should have offered it back at Nassim. Bok stood up from the bench to face Tovano. With a grimace, the old sorcerer leaned up on his walking stick.
That would have been the right thing to do by you. But would it have been the right thing by the kingdom? I still do not know. And while it may be too late, I offer you my honesty now. That, and a renewed offer. I can teach you high magic as I have done with Isabella. There is much more for you to learn. But once you do, young man, your opportunities are endless.
He fished a small glass globe from his pocket and held it out for Bok to accept.
What do you say?
Bok raised his eyebrows. His own eyes reflected off the globe's shiny exterior. The opportunity is as generous as he claims, but it doesn't tempt me. No. You may be a great teacher, but I will not be your student. Bok waved his hands to accentuate his certainty. Tovano leaned forward on his cane.
Bok, please reconsider. Do not let some stubborn grudge against me rob me of the chance to develop those skills.
I don't intend to. As Bok walked away, he added, I already have someone to teach me. At least I pray I do. I just hope Kotarian says yes. Dun, da 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 da. Let's see, do we have any more, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages? Yes, we do. We still have another chapter to go. Are you all ready? I believe I am ready. If you are, then let us jump right away into it. Chapter 53. 3 days later, Bok packed his meager but growing possessions and left his room at the royal palace for the final time. His work as an emergency healer in the palace infirmary had ended.
The patients wounded in the Battle of Ithanel either had recovered enough to be discharged, or they would require daily care for the rest of their lives. The infirmary's normal staff could manage without his assistance. The night before, Bok announced his intentions to return to Sola Valley at an informal dinner gathering on the fourth floor. Isabella and Aventil were there, as was Kotarian. Wingate and Umra also attended in their official capacities, but Isabella made sure they joined in the meal and conversation. Tavano declined the invitation, which relieved Bok. He needed time and distance from his one-time mentor. In Isbiano's absence, Isabella shared some good news. Although the house had not yet named a new emissary of magic, at Isabella's recommendation, Kotarian would serve as a liaison between the new emissary and the king. In that job, he would foster better relations between the crown and the house of magic.
It's the obvious choice.
He smiled as he swished his full glass of red wine.
Who would be better suited for such an important role?
The gathering didn't break up until late in the night. No one wanted it to end. Finally, though, Bok stood up to leave, knowing he had a long ride ahead of him the next day. Isabella grabbed his arm. "Wait, there is something I must give you. You will be at the stables early tomorrow morning."
"At dawn's first light. But a gift?
You owe me no reward." "This is something I want you to have. Sleep well, my friend."
"Good night, Isabella."
What type of gift does one receive from the princess?
I'm sure I'll never be able to guess. Might as well wait until morning to find out.
Isabella waited for Bok at the stables early the following morning, just as the sky began to brighten. She sat on a bench outside of Becky's stall, sipping a mug of coffee. Steam curled up around her face as she brought the cup to her full lips. "Good morning, Bok. I brought you one, too." Isabella handed Bok a matching ceramic mug emblazoned with the Inishari crest. He thanked her, and she stood up in front of him, always taller than her diminutive height suggested.
Perfect."
Bok smiled in response. "Thank you. This will give me a boost for the ride back to Sola Valley." "I believe this will have the same effect." Isabella reached into her silk purse and produced a tightly rolled scroll, sealed in wax with her royal seal, and tied with a purple ribbon. It appeared similar to the message Bok received at his family's blacksmith shop, the summons that started him on this unreal adventure.
"I don't understand," he said.
"Just read it. You will." And so he did. "Let it be known that from now forth, the practice of high magic is open to all classes in Immerenia. The House of Magic shall devise and submit a written proposal for incorporating apprentices from the landowning and serving classes in its recruiting and training processes. This is the word of Princess Isabella Inishari, 87th Monarch of Immerenia." With a knowing wink, she drank from her mug. "As we speak, messengers are on their way across the country to deliver this news. There's even one heading to Sola Valley." His hands shaking, Bok read and reread the scroll, making sure his mind interpreted the words correctly. She had defied centuries of tradition and revealed the royal family's most painful secret, and created new opportunities and greater equality for Immerenia's serving class. Finally satisfied that he had read it properly, Bok tucked the scroll in his healer's bag, lest his tears smudge the ink. "Isabella, Thank you, my friend. This is a gift beyond measure. Serving class children will never know in Immerenia where the House of Magic has a closed door. But beyond that, she heard what I said about my people. She listened and cared enough to make it right. To paraphrase my father, I needed a country healer to remind me of what is just." Bok put a hand to his forehead. Her father! What type of trouble will Isabella be in when he realizes what she's done? Isabella laughed. "I know what you are thinking, Bok. I am certain father will not be pleased." She swung her feet out in front of the bench. "But deep inside, he knows I am right. Plus, He cannot be too mad with his only child.
Bok felt the tension drain from his body. He leaned against one of the stable's sturdy wooden support posts, particularly when that daughter and her friends just saved his life and the entire kingdom.
Exactly. With that settled, I do not understand why you must leave Ithanel, Bok. Can you not reconsider your decision?
It is as I said. Sola Valley needs its healer. I have a duty to my people. Isabella nodded, then looked down into the swirling light brown liquid in her cup.
Of course. I understand the burden of duty. I will miss you, Bok Omat.
And I you, Princess. He started to move toward Becky, paused, then turned back to Isabella. Of course, I never said I could not visit. I would not miss Aventel's celebration of 19 summers in a few weeks. Oh, and Kotarian has agreed to train me in high magic. His exact words last night were, "There is so much Bok doesn't know, I am not sure he is capable of becoming a competent sorcerer. But if anyone can break through his lifetime of ignorance, it would be me." Anyway, I am to come to the royal palace every third week to have my confidence shattered and parentage insulted. I shall have time for a royal consult in between humiliations, so get used to seeing me around your house. She laughed, perhaps even guffawed, if a princess may do such a thing.
Bok, you deliberately waited to tell me that. Do your parents know what a mischievous son they have raised? If so, I may have to tell them in person.
In person? You mean you plan to visit Sola Valley?
Isabella nodded. If I am to be queen, I must see Imarinia beyond the majestic city of Ithanel. I thought Sola Valley could be an appropriate place to begin this exploration. That is, if you might recommend a knowledgeable local guide.
I believe that can be arranged, Your Majesty.
That will also give me the chance to meet little Noji, and to compare notes with Yata. I suspect she has some interesting stories to share.
With that, they hugged one more time, and this time, any conflicted feelings Bok may have once had were gone. Only warmth remained. I came to Ithanel as a country healer, and I leave changed in so many ways, but none more important than having gained a beloved friend. Along with my family's love, Isabella's friendship is the greatest gift I have ever received, and I don't have to choose between them. He rode away from the royal palace with that friend, the crown princess of Imarinia, waving farewell until she faded into the distance. Bok already missed her. Bok patted the saddlebag on Becky's side. He felt the wooden box with Noji's dolls under his fingers. It hadn't all been a dream. The road back to Sola Valley gave him plenty of time to think, and he would take full advantage. But on this already humid morning, a lone thought dominated his thoughts. How in the world am I ever going to explain all of this to Yata? All right, everyone. We have reached the end of the Blacksmith's Boy. I hope you guys have all enjoyed the story. Once again, please make sure if you have not done so, you stop out, visit Amazon.com, pick up the book, support the author. You can also get an ebook from Wild Ink Publishing, or you can check out the author's website, brucebuchananauthor.com. And for me, thank you to all of you. The greatest gift that you can give me as a streamer is a gift of your time. And I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or for the full reading. Thank you all so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. On Tuesday, I will be starting my next read, which I want to say is Brecken and Sons Company, Brecken and Company, something like that.
I'm probably saying it wrong, but it is by, I want to say she's a Danish author writing in English. So I hope you will come along on Tuesday and help me support yet another fantastic indie author. And for all of you, I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead, and I look forward to seeing you guys again really soon. Remember, all of these chapters will be up and available on the YouTube channel a little bit later this evening, youtube.com/@SirArminius, and the entire concise thing all put together will be available on Rumble, probably later this week. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening, and a wonderful week ahead, everybody. Good night, all.